Alright, so first and foremost, I'm going to give all praises to the Most High Yahweh, and we do so in the name of Hamashiach Yahweh Shah, and I pray that this lesson is further edifying to whoever it comes across. So in this ministry, we teach that blacks, natives, and Latinos are the biblical Israelites foretold to go into slavery and lose their identities in Luke 21 and 24 and Jeremiah 17 and 4. And even though we have a plethora of evidence to support this claim, there are many heathen who refuse to accept this truth, and instead will provide endless excuses as to why blacks, natives, and Latinos cannot be related to the biblical Hebrew Israelites. For example, when we bring up the archaeological proof, they tell us the findings are fake. When we utilize historical records, they assert fabrication, and if we reference biblical prophecy, they respond with unlearned doctrines or assumptions surrounding a book they never read, while negating any possibility of our claim to the Israelite lineage. However, this was not always the mindset for all heathen. As we've covered in prior lessons, many Europeans once believed blacks, natives, and Latinos were Israelites. And even though the heathen refused to accept archaeology, history, and biblical prophecy today, their Edomite ancestors left multiple avenues in which we can prove our understanding to be true, as we will see in today's video. With this being said, today's presentation will go into a book titled A Star in the West, and in doing so, we will explore the language of the natives while comparing it to the dialect of the Israelites, which will further prove blacks, natives, and Latinos are descendants of the biblical Hebrew Israelites. So to start, it's imperative to explain why language is important when connecting the nation to its ancestors. When we look at history, multiple languages have changed over time due to nations adopting pieces of or adapting to the languages around them. For example, a simple Google search proves that all languages change with each generation due to nations evolving pronunciations, borrowing new words, and losing the meaning of old words in the process. However, even though this is the case, each language will always retain the roots of its mother tongue, even if the current form of the language sounds alien in comparison to its former self. For example, the official language in Iran is known as Farsi, and is said to be a Persian dialect. But history shows the Persian language has had 3 major evolutions, which means the original Persian will have a hard time understanding their Iranian descendants today. Also, page 96 of the book titled A Star in the West, and it reads, "Let anyone compare the old original Hebrew, spoken with so much purity by the Jews before the Babylonish captivity, with that spoken by the same people on their return, after the comparatively short space of 70 years, and he will find that it had become a barbarous mixture of the Hebrew and Chaldea languages, so as not to be understood by an ancient Hebrew, and in a great measure has continued so to this day." So after reading this, if we apply this understanding to the Hebrews of old, we shouldn't expect their descendants to speak the perfect Hebrew. Instead, they should speak a language that shares a similarity to that of their ancestors with various adaptations and adoptions that, to the unlearned ear, would seem to be an entirely new dialect, which explains why Europeans couldn't immediately understand or relate to the native language, which had evolved from its Hebrew roots over time. Moving forward, page 91 of a book titled A Star in the West assumes the native languages changed due to them not having a writing system. And though we know this to be false due to native syllabaries being discovered, it doesn't change that Europeans observed a pattern of evolution in the native tongue. With this being said, the language the natives have today will not sound like the ancient Hebrew, but if these dialects are related, they will retain similarities even as the languages evolve. So now that we have this understanding, let's see if we can find these similarities when exploring the native languages. Now when we go back to page 91, it reads, "The Indian languages in general are very copious and expressive, considering the narrow sphere in which they move, their ideas being few in comparison with civilized nations. They have neither cases nor declensions. They have few or no prepositions. They remedy this by affixes and suffixes, and their words are invariably the same in both numbers. All this, if the writer's information be correct, is very similar to the Hebrew language. He has been informed from good authority, and the same is confirmed by a writer well acquainted with the subject, that there is no language known in Europe except the Hebrew without prepositions, that is, in separate and express words. The Indians have all other parts of speech except as above." Before we continue, a preposition is a word governing a group of words used before a noun, pronoun, or noun phrase to show direction, time, place, location, spatial relationships, or to introduce an object. So in simple words, it's a word that helps describe the actions of a person, place, or thing while also being a way to help a person, place, or thing fit actions within a sentence. For example, Google shows the words at, in, of, and to are all prepositions, which means if I were to say Chris walked in the store, the word walked would be an action, while the word in will be the preposition used to describe the action of Chris walking. With all this being said, The passage on the screen implies that the Hebrew and many native languages were the only languages known to Europeans that were built without these prepositions, which links both people groups to each other and implies that one passed on the roots of a language to another. Or in other words, the Hebrew language of old provided the roots for the native languages heard by early European explorers. Now, of course, this is just the surface of the connection, but when we dig deeper, we also find specific structures of languages among the natives that expose their Hebrew origins. For example, page 95, and it reads, about the year 1684. The governor of New York sent an accredited agent to the Onondagos on a dispute that was likely to arise with the French. The agent, one Arnold, behaved himself very haughtily towards the Indians at delivering his commission. One of the chiefs then answered him on a strain of Indian eloquence, in which he said, among other things, I have two arms. I extend the one towards Montreal, there to support the tree of peace, and the other towards Corlaer, the governor of New York, who has long been my brother. Anondes, the governor of Canada, has been these 10 years my father. Corlaer has been long my brother, with my own good will, but neither one or the other is my master. He who made the world gave me this land I possess. I am free. I respect them both, but no man has the right to command me, and none ought to take amiss my endeavoring all I can, that this land should not be troubled. So in short, the passages we just read shows the response of a well-spoken native chief after being disrespected by an arrogant European. And within his words, we find many similarities to the structure of the Hebrew language, along with other key references that establish the connection. For example, the chief starts by saying he has two arms that have been extended to others in support. And this is interesting due to Psalms 136 and 11 through 12 having a similar word structure when it shows the Father, Yahweh, stretch out his arm in support of the Israelites. The next point to address is his analogy of a tree of peace, which shows a Hebrew connection due to Proverbs 3 and 7 through 18 comparing a woman to a tree of life, while Genesis 2 and 17 compares the philosophy of sin and righteousness to a tree of good and evil. Furthermore, even though the native chief shares no relation to his European company, he addresses a few as his brother, which is interesting due to them having a Hebrew understanding, as we've proven in other videos, which will lead them to believe the West European Edomites descend from Esau, which makes them a brother nation to the Israelites and their native descendants, as it is written in Deuteronomy 23 and 7 and further reiterated in Obadiah 1 and 10. Also, the chief addresses one man as his father due to them having a stronger relationship, which is seen in 1 Timothy 1 and 2 when Paul addressed Timothy as his son due to their relationship in the faith. However, all of this is nothing compared to his final words showing his belief that the Father gave the natives the land of America. As we've also discussed in prior videos, 2 Ezra 13 and 44 through 46 shows the Father giving the natives passage to find the land Asareth, which was proven to be America by Christopher Columbus during his first expedition. So when the native chief said the Father gave him this land, he was speaking in memory of his Israelite ancestors that found the land through the will of the Father. But the connections don't end here. As we continue reading, we find even more evidences to connect natives to the Hebrews while eliminating any other explanation for their origins.